the top 4 congressional leaders invited to talk about some heavy issues. First off, this looming deadline for a partial government shutdown, as you mentioned, Friday night at 11:59. If they don't get a deal by then, 5 government agencies would shut down. It's a historic moment that we're talking about. There's not been an impeachment of a cabinet secretary for 148 years. 1876 was the last time that we saw something like this. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says that they are going to renew the conversation when they come back in the new year. But the issue, Chuck, is that when they come back with that Christmas good spirit and those ugly sweaters, they're still going to be facing the same obstacles. It is a question of whether these voters will come home. Will they come back to former President Donald Trump when it comes to the general election? And there's really the same exact question on the other side of the ticket. The campaign is transitioning a little bit. They announced that 2 senior advisors were going to be moving out of the White House and towards the campaign. Does the Biden administration see this as sort of the next big frontier of this abortion fight?
I do think that that's a really important frontier.
March 1st is the big deadline here. That's when the funding runs out for 5 government agencies. And if it feels like we've been here before, that's because we have. And here at the White House, they're now raising the alarm about a possible escalation in the war in Ukraine, saying they now have evidence that North Korea is providing ballistic missiles to Russia and that Iran is in negotiations to do the same. What's the response to the critics that say we've already sent enough to Ukraine?
It's a great question.
We had these efforts from Democrats and Republicans, but it didn't quite work out. As you see the scrum go by with lawmakers. These are the court documents right here, which at times read like a spy thriller, as we're now learning that Alexander Smirnov had, quote, extensive and extremely recent contact with foreign intelligence officials. And with McConnell leaving, there's now set to be a political fight to try and find his replacement. The top 3 most likely contenders being referred to as the 3 Johns. That is John Thune from South Dakota, John Cornyn from Texas, and John Barrasso from Wyoming. McConnell and President Joe Biden did serve together in the Senate. Biden telling reporters today that he had trust and a good relationship with McConnell, even though they would, quote, fight like hell.
Personally, it was a sad day. It was a very, very sad day.
On this landmark anniversary, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre is reflecting on another date, June 24th, 2022. The day Roe v. Wade, which guaranteed the right to an abortion, was overturned. The Supreme Court tossing the issue back to the states. 21 of them have now banned or severely restricted abortions.
All of these bans, all of these restrictions, they're not where majority of the American people are. Majority of the American people want to see freedoms for women, freedoms from themselves.
Jean-Pierre speaking with us exclusively to outline what the White House has been doing ever since that Dobbs ruling to try and boost access to abortion. President Biden convening the Task Force on Reproductive Health Care Access for the 4th time on Monday. Jean-Pierre saying, among other things, the task force is focused on boosting access and affordability for contraception, protecting access for medication abortion, offering guidance on patients' rights relating to abortion during a medical emergency, and launching legal challenges against state and local restrictions.
Folks, this is what it looks like when the right to privacy is under attack.
The task force meeting, part of a coordinated message between the White House and Biden's re-election campaign, highlighting the issue of abortion rights, which has propelled Democratic candidates in the past 2 years.
I'm an OBGYN in Texas.
The campaign releasing a brand new ad.
To take your freedoms.
And the vice president visiting the swing state of Wisconsin, kicking off a nationwide Fight for Reproductive Freedoms tour, where she attacked former President Donald Trump for his role in ending Roe.
Young women today have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers? How dare he?
These efforts being blasted by anti-abortion groups. National Right to Life President Carol Tobias writing, this massive effort to pit women against children is disgraceful. Biden's director for the Gender Policy Council, Jennifer Klein, says these actions taken by the administration only go so far.
The only way to restore the rights that were lost, the fundamental constitutional right that was lost, that was protected for nearly 50 years under Roe versus Wade, is to have federal legislation.
And this focus on abortion is set to continue. The president and the vice president will hold their first joint appearance for the 2024 campaign on Tuesday. It's set to be held in Northern Virginia, and a campaign official tells us that the focus is going to be on reproductive rights.
History's watching. The world is watching.
The reason Donald Trump's dominating the race, what he did for us, and what he'll do for us.
The campaign ads, just like these, have already begun.
What a great crowd!
Costing candidates, when all is said and done, billions of dollars by Election Day.
What we're seeing right now, it's record-breaking numbers.
Matthew Foster from American University has been tracking the fundraising numbers for years and says they've been going up, election after election, for decades.
It's like an arms race. I mean, every party has to outraise the other. There isn't one advantage to one party. The question is this the best way to spend billions and billions of dollars?
And of course, it's not just presidential elections where we're seeing big spending. If you take a look at races for House seats, Senate seats, and for the White House, according to Open Secrets, we had some $14.4 billion in total spending in 2020, more than doubling what we saw in 2016.
And now the money is flowing yet again. Campaign finance reports show that heading into February, President Joe Biden's campaign had about $56 million in cash on hand. Former President Donald Trump's campaign had just about $30.5 million. And Republican Nikki Haley's war chest had just about $13 million. Big numbers, no doubt. But Foster says it's actually lagging way behind 2020 numbers, when at this point in the campaign, Trump had a whopping $92.6 million in the bank.
It's getting to the point where the resources are thinning out. There's only a finite amount of money, and I do believe that 2020 may have been the high watermark.
But the money heading to campaigns tells just part of the story. More and more money is being funneled to outside spending groups.
When you look under the hood, do you think a lot of people would be surprised to see how money gets to campaigns?
I think so.
Saurav Ghosh is the director of federal campaign finance reform at the Campaign Legal Center in Washington, and says to understand what's going on, it's helpful to separate the money in federal campaigns into two buckets. In one bucket, you've got the money raised by the candidates and the national political parties. And these have strict contribution limits. For example, individual donors can give no more than $3,300 per candidate in every primary and general election. But then there's the second bucket, where you'll find outside groups like super PACs. These groups are raising millions of dollars for candidates, running ads and sending mailings for them. But they're not supposed to be coordinating any of this with the campaign. And these super PACs have no contribution limit at all.
Literally, the sky's the limit. The depth of your pocketbook is the limit.
And the numbers show that these super PACs are gearing up to spend big yet again. The main super PACs for Biden, Trump, and Haley had just over $50 million combined in the bank to start the year. Ghosh argues that all this outside money is bad news for average Americans and for democracy.
They are more and more being pushed to the back by the wealthy, the special interests who have the money and are looking to influence the political process.
Efforts to reform the campaign finance system and bring more transparency to donations have gone nowhere in Congress. And although 2024 may not end up setting another record for campaign spending, we can say that billions of dollars will be spent to influence your vote. In Washington, I'm Evan Koslof, Spectrum News.
You buy a house and it goes up in value. That's one of the areas where average working class people are able to create wealth. And now Wall Street's trying to come in and take that wealth away from the average person as well.
Representative Adam Smith, a Democrat from Washington, is telling us about his new bill to take Wall Street out of the housing market. The End Hedge Fund Control of American Homes Act of 2023 would mandate that hedge funds unload their single-family homes over a 10-year period. It eventually would prohibit hedge funds from buying these properties at all. Smith argues that these hedge funds are edging out individual home buyers.
All of those investors are driving up the cost of housing, all right, because they can pay. They can come in and drop $2 million cash for a house in Belleville.
Corporate ownership of single-family homes jumped during the 2008 housing crisis, when homes could be scooped up on the cheap amid widespread foreclosures. A recent report from the Urban Institute, a left-leaning think tank, estimated that large institutional investors of at least 100 properties held a total of 574,000 single-family homes nationwide as of June 2022. That makes up about 3.8% of single-family rentals.
Just very unlikely that will improve affordability.
Housing policy expert Alex Horowitz says he doubts that a law targeting hedge funds would reduce prices in a meaningful way, because he says the big problem right now is a lack of supply.
We need more homes. The U.S. is short about 4 to 7 million homes. And until we're building enough to make a dent in that shortage, the affordability issues are going to persist.
The bill already faces opposition from housing trade groups like the National Rental Home Council, and so far has no support from GOP lawmakers. Smith concedes that this bill has a tough road ahead.
You want to ask me, is this thing going to pass in this Congress? No, this thing isn't going to pass in this Congress. but it is an important idea so that people can begin to understand what's going on and we can begin to advocate for policies that better help working class people in this country.
Horowitz argues that the best way to bring home prices down is by relaxing zoning regulations so that more homes can be built. But he points out that those decisions are made on the local level, not on Capitol Hill. In Washington, I'm Evan Koslof, Spectrum News.